Good afternoon and welcome to this live coverage where we continue to follow a rapidly unfolding development across the region amid an increasingly complex and volatile situation. In the latest developments, tensions in the Strait of Hormuz have intensified further with reports of incidents affecting maritime traffic, underscoring the growing risks to one of the world's most critical energy corridors. These developments come despite the United States announcing an extension of ceasefire with Iran, even as military pressure continues through an ongoing naval presence and heightened security measures in the region. At the same time, diplomatic efforts appear to face uncertainty, with talks that were expected to take place in Pakistan now unclear amid evolving conditions. The impact is already being felt globally, with energy markets reacting to the uncertainty and concerns mounting over the stability of the supply routes and the broader implications for international trade. In today's coverage, we will examine the latest developments from multiple angles. We will connect with key international capitals. From London, we have our correspondent Jamal Shaheen, and from Beijing we will hear from Malik Ayoub, a geopolitical analyst, and from Washington, Dr. Nabil Mikhail, writer and political commentator, of course, and the one from China, he is also commentator and in China's position and its role ongoing diplomatic efforts. And of course, those experts from London to China, who is Pakistani, and the US, give us the latest. Together, we will explore the security, economic and geopolitical dimensions, and of course including the escalation side and diplomatic side, and all aspects that relate to the war itself and its development on the latest developments that is occurring. Stay with us as we bring you the comprehensive, up-to-date coverage and in-depth analysis throughout this special broadcast. Now, dear viewers, we have on a live Zoom call our correspondent based in London, Jamal Shaheen, who is with us to give us the latest regarding the war that is happening from someone who is living in London, the latest in the UK and the European. And of course, we'll get to know more about what's happening in the US Fed and of course the Central Bank of England and it's keeping its rate fixed lately. So, Mr. Jamal, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you, Mr. Abdurrahman.
Well, first of all, Mr. Jamal, we welcome you here with us once again and again in our studio. And we'd like to ask you and begin with you, from where you are, what can you give us the latest update to begin with at the wider picture from the latest developments about the war?
Thank you for having me in this program. The situation is very gloomy. It's very, very gloomy. This is why the Federal Reserve keeps the interest rate, because any change in the interest rate will give a negative sign. If the interest rate will be up, that means the inflation is coming, and this would mean and the growth and the other will be in a bad or a negative effect. If he minimize the interest rate, that means everything is going okay, which is not, because all of us know the price of the fuel, the price of energy, the price of electricity in the United Kingdom and in the US is the highest. It's very high and in the highest level since the Ukrainian war. This will not be a good sign. This is very gloomy. This is why they keep the interest rate in the same level till we find a solution in the coming days. But this is also, we have very gloomy issue because the Federal Reserve Chairman just said he will stay in his position even after his term is finished in 15th of May. That means nothing is unclear. This is why we have to keep as what we are, step by step, to secure the situation and step by step, not to go to the top, no, but to keep the level of the economy growth in the same level.
Mm-hmm. So you were mentioning that the U.S. Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, would stay in place as a Fed governor even after his tenure finished. Well, as of yesterday was his last meeting, as he said so. Well, probably because of the reasons. I mean, of course, Scott Bessent, the U.S. Secretary, he said that this is nothing has to do with someone that calls the institution that has norms and things like that. So, I mean, Powell said that he would stay just because until the legal issues finish, and then he would go to retirement and stuff like that. So, do you think if he stayed, it would affect the decisions of the next president of the Federal Reserve, or the head of the Federal Reserve, who will be Kevin Warsh?
No. If he stay for a little bit more time, this will give more confidence to the national to the Federal Reserve, because if he leave now, because of the tension between him and the President Donald Trump, when he said he should be sacked or he should be fired because he has to minimize or to decrease the interest rate. Most of the central bank around the globe is supporting him because this is the independence of the decision, of the economic decision. This might be something that they wanted to keep him, to give more confidence and certainty to the economic situation. Otherwise, most of the central bank around the globe and the visitor will see, even if the decision by the new one, if it's right, it will have some question about is this the policy of the U.S. administration or the policy to keep the economy on track. This is why it's much better to keep him for some time, to put more confidence to the economic situation and the economic institution, not only in the United States, but also in the global. Because if he go and the decision came without any consideration, that means a huge impact in the world economy and the market. This is my understanding to the situation. He might be safe for much time because he has the support for all the central bank, and when he has a problem with Donald Trump, most of the leaders of the central bank, G7 and the EU, supporting him to stay, and was against to lose the independence of the Federal Reserve in the United States, like here and the other country. So he should be saying just to keep the economy on track.
Before we get into details about the EU and, of course, Central Bank of England, let's focus a little bit on the US, as we are still there, about the decision that took place yesterday by Powell and his team that to keep interest rate at 3.5 and 3.75%. How do you view this decision? Do you view it as a cautious decision or a postponement to combat inflation, or is it more of a cautious decision that things are building up, like inflation is building up, unemployment may be getting weaker, especially that data is still coming up and as a result of the war that has been going on, and we still don't have much data. I mean, it's only been 2 months, and the upcoming months will be also more decisive when more data comes out, as a result of the war. So how do you view the decision generally?
This decision is just to keep things on track because they have the data. They know the inflation in the United States will be higher because of the price of fuel. The inflation here in the United Kingdom, Andrew Bailey, the governor of Bank of England, just an hour ago, he said, if the Strait of Hormuz is still closed and the supply chain and also the fuel chain from GCC country and the Gulf will stay like it is, he expected the inflation will be up by 6.2% by the end of this year. The inflation now is around 3%. That means 3% higher in 5 or 6 months. This will be a big disaster. It's an early thing in the United States. Sometimes we don't need to take all of the announcement by Donald Trump we didn't need to take into account, because sometimes he's very pragmatic one. Sometimes he says something and then the next day or next hour it changes. So even if he said we will try to open the Strait of Hormuz, like Wall Street Journal said, there is a plan to cooperate with many European countries to open the Strait of Hormuz and guarantee the free navigation. But in the same time, he was looking to blockade the Strait of Hormuz much more than that, which will have a huge negative impact. So to keep the system as it is now is just very crucial about what we are heading to. They try to delay the decision, to announce a new data which is more negative and put the global economy and the growth of the economy in a bad situation. But this is not a secret. If we go to IMF meeting last week in Washington, most of the prediction project that the global economy growth will be declined by 0.5%. We even see it here. And also anyone in the United States understand the price of fuel is very high. This is the highest level. So they try to keep it or delay it just for later, to keep on and on. Maybe they will find agreement and the Strait of Hormuz will be open again. If this will happen, that means we will avoid a negative, huge impact in the future. And then there will be like a glimmer of hope if we open the Strait of Hormuz instead of keep glooming.
And now, before we take a look at what's happening in Europe in terms of interest rate and the UK as well, let's move to Kevin Walsh, who's supposed to be at the head of the Federal Reserve. So the US president has specifically called Kevin Walsh my guy, which signaled that Kevin Walsh may be inclined to decrease rates, as the US president has been wanting that for a long time. But at the same time, Kevin Walsh, in his Congress hearings that we have heard him, he said specifically that he is not a toy to anyone and he will not be losing the Fed's independence to anyone, and he will not decrease or increase rates based on anyone requirement. So if the Kevin Walsh decreases rates, whether upon the request of the secretary, which is Scott Bessent, or the request of Donald Trump, do you think it would be a little bit problematic, especially in times of higher inflation?
This will be problematic not only for the economy but also for the U.S. administration. One of the main reasons to change the Federal Reserve chairman is he asked him many times to minimize the interest rate. If he said, "This is my guy," that means he will make the interest rates lower. In the same time, we can't have lower interest rates and we are heading to the inflation to be higher. So it would be in contradiction. If he go with the U.S. administration with Donald Trump and the lower the interest rate, this would be against the rule. That means the inflation will be more higher and the spending will be more higher. In the same time, there is a connection between keep the interest rates high and fighting the inflation and the try to make the inflation a little bit down and go to the target. So it's his decision. Like I said before, one of the most important things to keep Jeremy Powell is for a little bit time, even after his term is finished, it's just to have a confidence in the global market, to have a confidence in the Federal Reserve, just to keep things on track, not to go in the other direction. Because if we go back to the other direction, it will be a huge negative impact, more than the pandemic in 2019. Because the pandemic, it was natural disaster, but here it's a war, and then we blockade the Strait of Hormuz. Like we put our hand in the neck of someone, he can't breathe. The world need a fuel, and then we have two blockades. The first one is Iranian, and the other is the United States. This is very bad for the economy. This is a negative sign for the economy. I think he is in very bad situation. He needs to keep the independence of the Federal Reserve. And if he keeps the independence of the Federal Reserve, he should go with the expectation to rise the interest rate, to try to keep the economy, and to keep the inflation on the track, and they take the inflation to the target. This is one of his. The most challenging thing is to with the new chairman of the Federal Reserve is to keep the independence of the Federal Reserve, which he's not saying that the other central bank will agree about the independence from the U.S. administration.
Well, that's clear, Jamal, about the U.S. Now, if we want to take a look at the Bank of England, they have kept rates fixed today. How do you see this decision? Do you see it tied to the ongoing war with Iran?
Yes, he said completely. He said in the press conference, he said the situation in the Middle East, the longer the longer escalation of the Middle East, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz will have a huge negative impact in the economy. We can't predict how things will go. And he said it might be this will have a huge negative impact in fertilizing and also in food and food, and then the price, he expects the price will go higher and the higher, and then they have to increase the interest rate. This is one of the most important things. There is some expectation the interest rate, if the war is continue or this situation continue, the interest rate will go to 4 or 5 by the end of the year. In the same time, before the war, we expect the interest rate to go to 3 by the end of this year. This is very gloomy. He said we will keep eye on data, but the only the only way to avoid any negative impact in the economy is to have a solution from the source. And he said the source is open the Strait of Hormuz, de-escalate the situation in the Middle East. This is what Andrew Bailey said hour ago.
And you are saying that rates in England may be seen higher if the war goes up. And how would this affect the public in England generally?
This will have a huge impact. First of all, most of people here don't own his home. They put it like installment or mortgage.
And
This
loans.
means if yeah. This is like we have 4 million families here are in installment with the bank mortgage. The bank supports them and they pay monthly payment and they follow the interest rate. If the interest rate becomes higher, that means we have between 5 to 150 pound more. In the same time, if this is continue, we expect from July the bill of the energy, gas and electricity will be higher because Keir Starmer froze it for 3 months. But in July, will be a huge impact. Today, the government tried to find another solution just to keep things moving. They have offered people to have a solar system to provide it to their home. But in winter, will not go will not be the right place because London is very cloudy. That means we have in very bad situation. The only way to go out politically and economically and even the cost of living is to open the Strait of Hormuz and de-escalate the situation in Middle East. Otherwise, we will see the food price will be higher. The food price by the end of this year will be 9% to 2% inflation. Also, the core inflation will be like 6.2, which is now 3.7. That means nearly 3%. And also, the price of most of essential goods like rice and other will be higher, and the meat and other will be higher more, £2, £3 more. That means $2, $3 more, which is have a huge impact on the cost of living of people. There are many analysis now asked the government and the Keir Starmer to do reshuffle and change the finance minister because they need more to decrease the tax to minimize the payment. But if he do all of this, he can't keep the balance because he will have a huge gap in spending for the budget.
And well, that's clear. Now, what about inflation in Europe? If we want to at least extend the picture and focus on inflation in Europe, is it now linked to the situation in the Middle East or energy prices in the GCC? Inflation in Europe?
Let's be clear. At this time, the GCC country and the Strait of Hormuz is like the heart of everybody. If the heart stops pumping, there will be a problem. If there is no pumping for the petrol, that means the whole body of the world will suffer. The UK, European country, is not different than United States or UK. Most of them have the same issue. Even the European Bank said if this situation is continue, they will have a shortage of fuel of the ship, and also the whole price of most of the goods, like food and other, will be higher, and will lead to a high inflation. In this case, they have to raise the interest rate as well.
But it seems to me that European economies are most affected in this conflict. Why is that?
The European economy is most affected because they have the imported gas from they imported gas from Qatar, and also because the gas which came from Russia, it stopped 4 years ago. They're still suffering from the impact of the Ukrainian war, and there is no Russian gas. At the same time, they have to give more money, more support, more economic support, and financial and the military support to Ukraine to keep it on track, not to lose to the Russian. And in the same time, the whole supply chain from gas and other, it's a huge affected. That means they are in very they are in desperate need to resolve the situation. This is why they are the huge impact and the negative impact. For nearly 60 years, the peace treaty and the flourish of no war, it made the European country and also United Kingdom to avoid to investment in infrastructure and also to avoid more investment in oil and gas and other. Even when they talk about the green energy, they don't have enough investment to support it to can rely on the last 2 months in the war and the situation in the Middle East make most of what we can read about the oil age is nearly ended. It's not true. It's just to sell this propaganda to people in Middle East. And now most of the European country is back again to cool and to try to find to back to reinvestment again in North Sea in oil and the gas again.
Do you think these economic pressures that you are mentioning, and they are what's pushing Britain and France to open the Strait of Hormuz? One of the reasons, at least.
This is one of the reasons, yes, but in the same time, this is diplomacy. Even if we have a failure in diplomacy, they have to try again. And also, one of the analysis, which is, maybe you like it or don't like it. Yes, the EU country and the United Kingdom have a deep strategic relationship with GCC country, but in the same time, they don't want to go with the United States in a war against Iran because they try to keep them or pressure them to get more advantage to find a solution to the war in Ukraine, to have the security point, to have more advantage in Ukraine, to change the attitudes and the positioning from Donald Trump, which is very pragmatic and takes the side of Russian. This is one of the most important things. But this is very narrow analysis because the most important thing, they try to find a solution, not only for the political issue, but for the economy, because the people here were suffering a lot. We see some shortage in the fuel pump in some area, and also the rise of food and other. It becomes very, very, very invisible here in United Kingdom and in Europe. It is not, if you need to fuel your car, it becomes more than $100, which is not been before. So they have to act very quickly. Otherwise, there is a local election here, and maybe they lose their position as a prime minister. And in France, the left wing is rising in the election. That means they have to act. But in the same time, what they're doing is we can see what I can see is not enough. It's too late, too little. Why it's too late? Because they keep away from the war and they don't have any power to convince Donald Trump to stop the war, and they don't have any power to force Iran to stop and to accept the deal. It's not like 2015 when Europe made the nuclear deal with Iran. Now it's completely different. But in the same time, they said, yes, we will do everything after the war, and we have reached to agreement for the ceasefire and stop the hostile activity. This is why some people here said what the Keir Starmer did is too little, too late.
Now, Mr. Jamal, let's move to our final segment. The war has been going for more than 60 days, especially included the ceasefire days as well. What do you think, or how much do you think the public of the European countries and the UK have felt this in terms of prices and everything?
For how long? For how this is very important question. This is very hard to answer because if the situation is keeping like what we have now, no hostile activity, that means there is a hope. But if the hostile activity is coming back again, that means there is a gloomy situation about how the refinery in GCC country come back again, or is this because we need more time to recover from what's happened from the appalling Iranian attack in many facilities in GCC country. Will take time. This is why this situation is unclear. It's very unclear. It's unusual because maybe within 2 weeks we will see some of the flight by British Airways and other airlines will be cut or cancelled. Yes, the transport commissioner of the EU said this is not because of the shortage of the fuel. This is because of the high price of the fuel. That means if this situation continues, there will be more hard price. But maybe some people said, why we talk about flight jet? One of the most important things in Europe and the EU is the summer holiday. The summer holiday is like a season. Nearly 85% of the British people go out of UK in the summer holiday just to enjoy. They try to save most of the money for this time. If this is counted, that means the money, the style of life is changed, which that means with the new local election in 7th of May, if Keir Starmer and the Labour Party lose, that he will face a vote of confidence of his chairman to be a chairman and the Prime Minister of the Labour Party and United Kingdom.
And Jamal, if this continues, the war, if it continues to get worse, we could see prices get even more higher and commissions more higher and more frustrations from the public?
Yes, completely true.
Definitely. Well, that's clear, Jamal Shaheen. Thank you for your fruitful answers and for your time as well. Be safe and thank you. Well, the viewers, at a moment where military calculations are colliding with global energy security, China has urged the UN Security Council to stop the militarization of the Strait of Hormuz crisis. Beijing warned that the excessive use of force does not protect maritime security. It deepens tensions, threatens trade routes, and raises the risk of a wider regional confrontations. Here's the full story.
The Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical energy arteries, is once again at the center of a dangerous geopolitical crisis. At the UN Security Council, China did not simply call for calm. It directly challenged the logic of military escalation, arguing that maritime security cannot be achieved through blockades, expanded deployments, or the abuse of force. China's permanent representative to the United Nations said the stability of international shipping lanes is closely tied to peace and stability in surrounding coastal states. In other words, the crisis in Hormuz cannot be separated from the wider confrontation involving Iran and the United States. Beijing went further, saying the root cause of the obstruction in the strait lies in what it described as illegal military actions launched by the United States against Iran. Despite a provisional ceasefire arrangement, China warned that Washington has escalated its military deployments and carried out targeted blockade operations, a move Beijing called extremely dangerous and irresponsible. For China, the warning is about the global economy. The continued closure of the Strait of Hormuz has already sent energy prices higher and raised fears of disruption to international trade and supply chains. China also emphasized that freedom of navigation must be protected under international law and the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. But Beijing stressed that these principles must not be applied selectively or used with double standards. Navigational rights, it said, must be exercised while respecting the sovereignty, security, and legitimate rights of coastal states. By taking this position, China is presenting itself as a voice against the militarization of Hormuz and in favor of political de-escalation. But its message is also sharply political. Maritime security cannot be managed by force alone, and one miscalculation in this narrow waterway could turn a regional crisis into a global shock for energy and trade.
تؤكد جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي جاهزيتها للاستجابة للطوارئ والكوارث في ظل الأوضاع الجيوسياسية الحاصلة في المنطقة. جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي تعمل من ضمن منظومة إنسانية متكاملة مع مؤسسات دولة الكويت من حيث الاستجابة السريعة وتجهيز المتطوعين من ضمن أفرقة مختلفة للاستجابة للطوارئ في سرعة قصوى. يعد متطوعين جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي من المتطوعين اللي تم تدريبهم مكثفاً في الإسعافات الأولية والاستجابة للكوارث والاستجابة الميدانية. تؤكد جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي جاهزيتها الميدانية ورفع جاهزيتها من حيث الاستجابة للطوارئ في حالات اللي يتم ندائها. بالنسبة للمخزون الاستراتيجي لجمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي فإحنا على أتم الاستعداد للاستجابة في حال النداء من قبل مؤسسات حكومة دولة الكويت.
قوة الإطفاء العام على استعداد تام وجاهزية للتعامل مع أي طارئ على مدار الساعة من خلال مراكزها البرية والبحرية والمطارات، ونحن نعمل وفق خطط طوارئ متكاملة بتجهيزات متطورة وكوادر مدربة على أعلى مستوى لضمان سرعة الاستجابة وكفاءة التعامل مع مختلف البلاغات سواء كانت خطرة أو بسيطة. وهذا الاستعداد والجاهزية لدينا مستمرة على مدار العام حفاظاً على سلامة الأرواح والممتلكات وتحقيق الأمن المجتمعي.
الحرس الوطني قادة وقواته دائماً على استعداد وجاهزية تامة لحماية الوطن بالتعاون مع زملاء السلاح في وزارتي الدفاع والداخلية وقوة الإطفاء العام، وتقديم الدعم والإسناد لكافة جهات الدولة خاصة في أوقات الأزمات والطوارئ. ونسأل الله أن يحفظ وطننا الكويت من كل مكروه في ظل قيادته الرشيدة.
منظومة الاتصالات بالكويت شغالة بكفاءة عالية ولله الحمد، والهيئة العامة للاتصالات وتقنية المعلومات مستعدة لأي طارئ لا قدر الله. وفي ظل التوترات اللي تمر فيها المنطقة فعلنا خطط الطوارئ وعززنا التعاون مع الجهات المعنية عشان نضمن استقرار الخدمات الرقمية وسرعة الاستجابة لأي مستجد. الوضع تحت المتابعة وكل الجهات المختصة على أتم الجاهزية. عسى الله يحفظ الكويت وأهلها.
بتوجيهات مباشرة ومتابعة حثيثة ومتواصلة من قبل مجلس الوزراء ووزيرة الشؤون الاجتماعية الدكتورة أمثال الحويلة، سارعت وزارة الشؤون إلى وضع الخطط المسبقة التي تهدف من خلالها إلى المحافظة على مستويات المخزون الاستراتيجي من السلع المواد الغذائية والاستهلاكية، ولضمان سلاسة وسهولة تدفقها إلى الأسواق التعاونية. قامت وزارة الشؤون ممثلة بقطاع التعاون بتشكيل 6 فرق ميدانية بواقع فريق لكل محافظة، وذلك للمتابعة اليومية للتأكد من كفاية المخزون الاستراتيجي. إن هذا العمل هو ثمرة تنسيق وتخطيط مسبق مع جهات الدولة المختصة التي وضعت لضمان استدامة الأمن الغذائي في مختلف الأوقات، ودامت الكويت بحفظ الله ورعايته.
منظومة الاتصالات بالكويت شغالة بكفاءة عالية ولله الحمد، والهيئة العامة للاتصالات وتقنية المعلومات مستعدة لأي طارئ لا قدر الله. وفي ظل التوترات اللي تمر فيها المنطقة فعلنا خطط الطوارئ وعززنا التعاون مع الجهات المعنية عشان نضمن استقرار الخدمات الرقمية وسرعة الاستجابة لأي مستجد. الوضع تحت المتابعة وكل الجهات المختصة على أتم الجاهزية. عسى الله يحفظ الكويت وأهلها.
Oil prices surged sharply as reports that Washington is considering potential military action against Iran reignited fears of a prolonged disruption to Middle East energy supplies. With the Strait of Hormuz still largely closed and diplomatic talks deadlocked, markets are bracing for the possibility of a deeper global energy crisis.
Brent oil prices jumped by as much as 7% today after reports suggested the United States is considering military strikes against Iran in an attempt to break the deadlock in negotiations to end the war and push Tehran back to talks over its nuclear program. The sharp rise reflects growing market concern over further disruption to Middle East energy exports, already severely affected by the near total closure of shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical energy choke points. Brent crude futures climbed to more than $124 a barrel, reaching their highest level since March 2022, while the U.S. West Texas Intermediate also extended its gains. Both benchmarks are now on track for a fourth consecutive monthly rise. Since the start of the year, Brent prices have more than doubled, while WTI has risen by more than 90%. The current crisis began after the United States launched airstrikes on Iran on February 28th. Iran responded by closing off almost all shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, sharply disrupting the flow of energy from the Arabian Gulf to global markets. Although a temporary ceasefire has paused direct combat, Washington has maintained a blockade on Iranian ports, while negotiations remain stalled. According to reports, U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to receive a briefing on potential military options against Iran. The White House has also spoken with oil companies about ways to limit the impact of a possible months-long blockade, in a sign that the crisis may continue for some time. Analysts warn that the prospects of a near-term resolution or the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz remain limited. For oil markets, the immediate focus is now on the risk of prolonged disruption, more than future production decisions by OPEC+. The impact is already being felt beyond energy markets. The United Nations says maritime traffic linked to the Strait of Hormuz has fallen by more than 95% since late February, raising concerns over energy security, global shipping, and supply chains. The World Bank has warned that energy prices could rise sharply in 2026, reaching their highest levels since the start of the Russian-Ukraine war. Fertilizer, metals, and food prices are also expected to climb, increasing pressure on households, businesses, and governments worldwide. In Europe, regulators have approved temporary support for sectors hit by higher fuel and fertilizer costs, including agriculture, fisheries, transport, and energy-intensive industries. With diplomacy stalled, military options under discussion, and one of the world's most important energy routes still restricted, the oil market is facing a fragile equation, either a political breakthrough that restores supply or a prolonged shock that pushes inflation and economic pressure far beyond the Middle East.
We now turn to Beijing, where we are joined via Zoom by Malik Ayoub, a geopolitical analyst and commentator who is closely following the latest development amid the ongoing regional escalation. From Beijing, attention remains focused on the broader geopolitical implications of the crisis, particularly as major global powers assess the evolving situation and its impact on regional stability, international security, and global trade dynamics. Malik Ayoub joined us with insight into how these developments are being viewed from Asia, including the role of diplomacy, shifting alliances, and the wider strategic outlook. Malik, thank you for joining us. Can you hear me?
My pleasure. Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, welcome with us. Can you please tell us, how does Beijing view and interpret the current balance between escalation and containment that is happening? And of course, is this a temporary phase or a part of a longer geopolitical shift?
Of course, it's a geopolitical shift and the responsibility, and the US actually taking all these things towards this kind of scenario where the geopolitical shift is moving on. Because when the US treatment and the US priorities are changing, the dynamics and the political shift is also changing. And it's depend on the Washington that how he want to choose things now and to want to unfold the things now. So of course there is a political shift and a paradigm shift, we can say even. And things maybe from the Middle East, I think that changing the priorities. American priorities are also changing, America is pushing the things towards not only America, but I think Donald Trump especially, because the Americans taxpayer, it's the money of the American taxpayers that has been used for the Israeli war, for the war that give more benefits to Israel and give more loss to the American people. And that is happening, I think, and it's unfortunate that these things are heading towards escalation. But I think that the US is trying to be step back on back step because Donald Trump has less option now to play and to bargain, because he has played almost all of his cards. And yesterday, the Congress grilling was one of the major proof that U.S. Trump is losing his sport now.
And we also heard that and seen that China is emphasizing stability. But how does this navigate when we are seeing major powers are not decreasing tensions, but also not stepping back as well, escalating rather?
No, I mean that if US want to escalate the things, of course, China, I mean that there is a bottom line for China as well, and the Chinese interests are legitimate according to international law. So China will not bow down, especially on those things, because if the US is going to bully the strategical alliance and the other countries, it's mean that the US keep this bullying on. And I think that the Russia and China are the only those countries who are standing with those countries that has been bullied by Americans. So I think that this is an emerging Eastern world order. This is a multipolar world order, and the China is, I think, very much on this rising multipolar world order. And if the US will want the collision or the escalation, I think that it's all the responsibility on the United States. But of course, if there is some like piracy and the blocking of the international channels and the Strait of the Hormuz that US has been doing for the long several weeks, I think. So these are actually the violation of the international law and the rule-based order that the US call. Even yesterday, the Congress said this thing, that the rule-based order that the US was actually famous, and the one thing that was applauded by the Americans, and it was one of the one thing that was the rule-based order. But now I think that there is no rule-based order that the America has to be claim that it is rule-based order. It is just like some sort of the very dictatorship or some sort of the very authoritativeship that the US want to impose on the other countries. So that is a dangerous trend that Washington is implementing, especially during the tenure of the Donald Trump.
That's clear. And do you see these tensions pushing the People's Republic of China towards more diversification, especially in energy sources and transportation routes?
No, China have a multiple source of energy. China is not totally dependent on the oil, and there is a very small portion that China buys. 70% or something like this, if I am not correct in the calculation. So China is largest importer of the oil. That is the need of the China. But there is a multiple sources of the energy right now, because there is a big transport that has been already switched toward the new energy and towards the electrical cars. So the China reliance and on the energy, especially on the petrol, is less as compared to the other developing countries and even the developed countries. So I think that energy being a tool that has been used by the Americans to slow down the economies, I think that is badly bounced back to the European alliance and even itself for the Americans, because the energy efficiency and the energy vulnerability, the US has more suffering than the other countries, and we saw the impact it's coming on the American taxpayers' pockets, that how the price of the petrol and the gas is increasing, and they are quite worried about this, that it's very hard for them to make their both ends meet. So this is something like this that the Americans are worried, and that's why the war, the people who are in the favor of the war popularity of the Trump is falling. So he is quite much losing on his graph in the sport of the Iran war.
What about its international affairs and diplomacy? Do you think it could reshape in the longer term? It could reshape the way it engages in the Middle East, at least beyond the economic ties?
I think that there is realignment, there is a re-emergence of the something like the Middle East policy, because the United States actually he wants to change the dynamics of power in the Middle East. So we also saw there is a very clear divide now in the Middle Eastern countries. But the problem is this, that how long the Americans can prioritize in the Middle East, because they have a major player in the Middle East, that is Israel. And Israel is something like this, that they are not working in the American interest, but more like the Tel Aviv own interest, because Netanyahu is doing those policies. Actually, he is facing a lot of trial or corruption trial inside, and whenever there is some trial open, he wants another war open into the Middle East. So that is something like this that is totally giving some sort of the leverage to Israel. But I think that this power shift will reevaluate and realigns the countries and their orientation towards the regional and the global players. And that has been quite visible. And I think that the US is quite on the losing position in this side.
And Mr. Malik, also we are curious what you think about the talks that took place in Islamabad, if they had helped in any way to ease tensions, at least between both the United States and Iran, and or if they did not produce a breakthrough.
The problem in the talks was this, that there is no guarantee actually no one want to be a guarantor of Donald Trump and the America and Israel, because if the Israel Americans will give this guarantee that yes, they will not wage any war against Iran, I think that the negotiation can move forward. But here I think that they have a very strong nexus between Trump and Netanyahu. So if the US will not do, it's the Israel actually who can attack on Lebanon or even on Israel. So this mean that the dual policy towards Iran is very dangerous, and it's a very dangerous trend actually, because if US play a dual game, a double standard game, I think that could be bounce back and it could be fire back in that case. So here is the problem is this, that the negotiation can move forward. Islamabad talks can go forward, but I think now even Donald Trump said that he will not, and there is a phone diplomacy he has initiated right now to talk with the Iranians. He also said that he is in talks with Iran. So the talks can move forward only if there is a very serious consideration by the United States. But if the US don't want to move this talks, I think that no one have more stakes as the US is. It's because the US is actually the one who has started this war.
And also we've seen contacts between Pakistan and GCC countries, some GCC countries. Do you see this to be led by Pakistan to include GCC in the mediation, or is it just logistical meetings and coordination?
No, I think that the GCC have on board because Pakistan has also very strong ties with the GCC countries, and the Saudi Arabia is one of the major player. So they have, the Prime Minister was moving on to the Saudi Arabia, and I think the Saudis were totally on board on this. I'm not sure about the United Arab Emirates, but I think that the other GCC members who are very close to the Saudi Arabia, they have, I think they are all on board, and of course there will be a very strong consent from Riyadh that how these negotiations can move forward, and they are totally on board.
And do you see it's difficult for Pakistan to be positioning itself in the middle as a bridge and neutral country between both the United States and Iran?
No, it could be difficult, but I think that there is no other country who was very close to Iran, and this is the Pakistan, because Pakistan has a very strong ties with Iran. And if any country, there are a lot of people saying that, oh, Pakistan is coming into the mediation, so there is no other appropriate country who have this ties, because we have a lot of Shia population in Pakistan. So there is, I think, a very strong bond between Shia and Sunni, so there is no sectarian divide even. So I think that that is something that make Pakistan into a very suitable position to talk with the Iranians. And there was no other country, I think, that who can talk at this level. And Pakistan also play very well, actually. They did not mediate towards anyone, and especially they talk like a very in a very clear way. Even the second talk, so the Iranians have reservation, and the Iranians did not go. So I think that Pakistan tried to convince it, but I think that Pakistan was not in a position to give the guarantees. That's why the second round did not take place, and I think that the things going on lingering on. So, but the role of the Pakistan being a stage, being a country to talk, I think that was something like this. That was the only option, and that was the Pakistan.
But both Iran and the United States, they are giving difficult and impossible proposals that both would accept. Do you think Pakistan could come out of this mediation, at least of anything, any results?
The mediation did not fulfill because Pakistan is in weak position. If mostly the mediation has been done by a very strong and the powerful country who can ask both parties to sit down. At one side, the United States is the country that means that violate all the rules. So in that case, I think that Pakistan position is a little weak in terms of implementing its like a mutual country who decide about something. So that is something like this that give more advantage to the United States, being its dominance on a mediator. So I think that that is one of the weak point that the mediation did not successful. That's why Iranians want to ask that if Pakistan or any other country will give this mediation, will this guarantee that US will not attack? So that there was no answer because Pakistan cannot give this guarantee. Not only Pakistan, any other country cannot give this guarantee that the Israel or the US will not attack on Iran or Lebanon. So this is the point that that need to be the negotiation, that need to be the strong guarantees, and it should be comply and bonded with the international law. So there is no one who can do this.
But didn't Shahbaz Sharif's efforts and other officials in Pakistan stop a full-blown war from happening? I mean, at least by the de-escalation that's happened. Don't you think that?
Of course, that has happened. There is a very positive impact. I think they play a very progressive, very positive role actually. And I think that Iranians have a quite trust on Pakistan. They trust Pakistan. That's why they were coming. Otherwise, if the situation like this, that the Iranians leaders are under threat, mean that they cannot move anywhere. We saw that how the top leadership has been targeted by Israel. So at that time, it was also very dangerous even for Pakistan to put its position, and I think Pakistan take a quite big risk to involve in such kind of the negotiation, being providing as a as a stage, because we saw how Islamabad was foolproof, so there was a tight security. So all these things I think did, and yes, there was the positive impact of their diplomacy, but I think that the 100% there was something expected that there could be some joint declaration, Islamabad declaration will come, and there's some sort of the signing of some agreement. I think that that did not happen, and that was actually the reason, because the reservation and those things that the both parties have not agree, these were the hurdles.
And with our final segment, Mr. Malik, do you think that with the rising tensions and increasing tensions in the region, how important and significant is Pakistan's role in shaping the diplomatic track, especially with the support of China?
Of course, China is always trying for a peaceful mediation, because China believes on the development, China believes on the progress and prosperity, because China is the country who is building and uplifting the other economies. So for China, actually, peace is something like this that is one of the major initiative, and they always try to contribute in this thing. And I think that as far as the US is concerned, so Donald Trump, if the situation is going on this, that is the only Congress, I think, who can cut the wings of this power corridor that Donald Trump is trying to use. And I think that the Congress yesterday has expressed a lot, and maybe it's moves towards some sort of the serious major breakthrough inside the US, because inside change in the inside, the change that could be made inside the America, that could, I think, that pave way to the peace in the Middle East and especially towards Iran.
So we can understand from your words that even China is pushing for peace and not for more escalation.
Of course, China never go towards the collision, because this is not the Chinese foreign policy. China never intervene into the other countries, I think. And this is one of their foreign policy tools, unless there is something like this that crossing the bottom line or the red line of China. So there is, of course, there is a bottom line and red line of China that China will not tolerate. But of course, in terms of the Middle East, in the opening of the Strait of the Hormuz, China is trying to do all the efforts.
Mr. Malik Ayub, these were elaborative answers. We thank you for your time and answers. For the first time since the start of the war in Iran, Washington is putting a number on the coast, a staggering $25 billion so far, amid a fragile ceasefire, rising domestic pressure and growing questions over how this war ends. Let's take the story.
For the first time since the war on Iran began, Washington reveals the number it has avoided, $25 billion US dollars. That is what the United States has spent so far. A staggering figure disclosed by a Pentagon official before Congress. But what's been revealed may only be part of the story, especially as it remains unclear whether it includes the cost of repairing damaged US bases in the Middle East. The war, which began with US airstrikes on February 28th, is not over. It has simply shifted into a fragile ceasefire, one that freezes the conflict rather than resolve it. On the ground, there are no signals of real de-escalation. Tens of thousands of additional troops, 3 aircraft carriers, and a continued state of military alert. The human cost is also mounting. 13 American soldiers killed and hundreds wounded in a war that was expected to be swift and decisive. Economically, the impact is reaching the US inside. Disruptions to oil and gas shipments have pushed up gasoline prices, with ripple effects hitting food, fertilizers, and essential goods at a time when Americans are already under growing financial pressure. Politically, the war is becoming a burden. With midterm elections approaching, the administration of Donald Trump is facing mounting pressure, while Democrats are linking rising living costs directly to the war on Iran. The numbers reflect this shift. Polls show public support dropping to just 34%, continuing a downward trend. The bottom line, $25 billion, human losses, economic strain, and declining public support. A war that was meant to project strength is now turning into a complex political and strategic test inside the United States.
قوة الإطفاء العام على استعداد تام وجاهزية للتعامل مع أي طارئ على مدار الساعة من خلالها البرية والبحرية والمطارات، ونحن نعمل وفق خطط طوارئ متكاملة بتجهيزات متطورة وكوادر مدربة على أعلى مستوى لضمان سرعة الاستجابة وكفاءة التعامل مع مختلف البلاغات سواء كانت خطرة أو بسيطة. وهذا الاستعداد والجاهزية لدينا مستمرة على مدار العام حفاظاً على سلامة الأرواح والممتلكات وتحقيق الأمن المجتمعي.
We now turn to Washington, where we are joined via Zoom by Nabil Mikhail, a political analyst and academic specializing in the United States foreign policy and Middle East affairs, who has been closely following the latest developments amid the ongoing regional escalation. From the US Capitol, attention remains focused on the evolving strategic calculations within the administration as Washington continues to navigate a complex balance between maintaining pressure and pursuing diplomatic engagement. These developments come at a time of heightened tensions with significant implications for regional stability, global energy markets, and international security. Discussions within political and policy circles in Washington are also intensifying, particularly regarding the direction of US strategy, the effectiveness of current measures, and the prospects for containing the situation in the coming period. Dr. Mikhail joins us with insight into how these developments are being assessed in Washington, including the internal dynamics shaping decision-making, as well as the broader geopolitical outlook. Dr. Mikhail, thank you for joining us. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well, and I must thank you for this kind invitation. My greetings to your distinguished audience and all of your staff and to yourself. And in fact, in your speech, you made a very excellent introduction whereby you defined the issues very well. You used very precise and concise phrases that really would convince anyone, even not a specialist, a lay person, that the crisis is imminent, is complicated, is extended, and there is no off-ramp road till present. You are asking me about the developments.
Yes.
Thank you for trusting my opinion. As you may know, yesterday there was an important phone conversation between the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and the President of the Russian Federation, President Vladimir Putin. And according to the press information, that the phone call lasted for an hour and a half. That means there were a lot of important discussions going on. So far, there has not been any publication of what transpired inside this conversation. But let me say in general, it's very important because a few days ago, as you may know, the foreign minister of Iran, after missing to meet Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, went directly to the Russian Federation and he met with the Russian president. So there must be some sort of communication between America and between America and Iran through Russia. That's an assumption that I think should not be refutable. On the other hand, there were also some talks about Ukraine, and you know how that war damaged the markets of so many commodities, the food, the wheat, other items. So it's also a very dire situation. So I believe that Trump will do two things against the backdrop of all these developments. He will maintain the blockade of the Iranian shorelines and ports. Iran also will not retreat from its closure of the Strait of Hormuz. But at one point in the future, there could be some exit, some solution to this strategic quandary. Why? Because the two sides will be tired of trying to contain each other without forcing any change. But as you can tell, Trump has the upper hand for one simple reason. He has more military power. Iran lost a lot of military material, and they do not have the money or the resources or the logistics to replace them. So there could be some sort of a tipping point in the near future. And as the time for the summit between Xi, the president of China, and President Trump approaches, and I think it will be within 2 weeks, not more, there could be some easing out because Trump wants to go to China carrying a message to the Chinese. I am the one who saved you. I am the one who forced Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz. Your economy was stifled. Now I'm helping you. So hitting Iran will also help Trump have a big standing against the Chinese.
Mm-hmm. And now, with the ceasefire in place, how do you view this? Do you view it as an influence to the U.S. stance, or do you view it as a let's say a weakening position to the U.S. and proning to at least danger?
Perhaps both of you and I have the very same experience in this regard. And I mean, we have been following, we were brought up on the Arab-Israeli conflict, and we know how fragile a peace ceasefire or a peace agreement is between the Palestinians and the Israelis. This logic, this model also is applicable in the question now between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran. The ceasefire is very shaky. It could collapse at any moment in time. Therefore, we have to be very careful. But as you notice, none of the none of the great powers like Britain, France, Germany, India, China, the Russian Federation, none of them have sent their fleets to the Gulf waters. So you have basically three players here: the Gulf states collectively, the United States, and Iran. So the conflict is contained within these three entities. That will allow for more confrontation. It will escalate the confrontation between Washington and Tehran. And this is a phrase that you used in your introduction. So it is shaky. It could happen, especially mindful of the fact that none of the powers is there militarily. So it's an open arena between two contending nations.
Mm-hmm. And also, Doctor, for the first time, at least, the Pentagon has revealed the cost of the war with Iran, that the US spent about approximately $25 billion at least to date. So how do you read these numbers?
It's very important because Hexas actually, I believe, was heckled yesterday when he went to Capitol Hill. And for some reasons, domestically, especially to fight illegal immigration, Trump also has deployed what is known in America as the National Guard in the Washington, D.C. area here, where I talk, and also in other capitals. So the cost is actually higher. And previously, he submitted a proposal for Congress having a budget costing the taxpayers $1.5 trillion. And the estimated cost of the war was a subsequent request by Hexas War Secretary for $200 billion. This is a lot of money. And this is what makes Trump very vulnerable. And the Democrats could hit him hard on this. So unless really he straightens out this financial...
Doctor, the Democrats could have the winning card in mid-elections because of that?
They will score some success. I think they can switch the majority in the case of the House, but their chances are slim also in the upper house, which is the United States Senate. So, but it will be a retreat. It will be a defeat for Trump. He could be impeached again by an act of impeachment if the House decides to do so. So the countdown for really a severe rival domestic situation is gearing up. So Trump really has to terminate the war. And let us see what he will tell the Chinese. And if he talks to Russia, and I think that Vladimir Putin must be thanked for his great effort to bring peace to Ukraine and to the Gulf. And if these calls are duplicated between President Trump and President Putin, I believe the situation could end soon because Russia does not want any war or any disruption in the Gulf or in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. But how does the White House really is trying to balance between voters from the American public that are facing increasing prices, whether be it from grocery or gasoline or fuel, and their objectives, military objectives to confront Iran?
It is the typical, very, very typical rhetoric of American politics. The Democrats are enmeshed in the tactic of tax and spend and being tolerant to illegal immigration, and the Washington language by the Republicans and all over the nation. The Republicans want you to spend more money on your family, not on failed government programs, and they do not want any foreigner to take your job. So it is the very basic traditional dueling between the two parties that has not stopped or is not going to be terminated in this season. So we just will listen to a very, very old song that has been repeated frequently.
Mm-hmm. And what's Washington's alternatives if the diplomatic efforts fail?
Good question. I believe in this case, Trump will seek recourse in a limited military action. And then I believe also the process of talking to each other will go, and it will go through Pakistan. I believe that Field Marshal Asim Munir, the chief of the staff of the Pakistani army, could be a mediator or conduit between the two sides because he already has visited Tehran and he knows a lot from the Iranian leadership. So he must tip the Trump administration with some offers, and there could be some easing of the situation, some retreat from the two sides. So I hope that the blockade over the Strait of Hormuz will not stay too long, and the economic situation could improve to every country, whether in the Arab or Islamic world or here in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Well, Doctor, that was clear, and we thank you for your answers and elaborative answers. And we, of course, thank you for the remarks and compliment for the introduction, but we must also give the credits to the editing team that have put the questions and introductions out as excellent as they are. So we thank you for your time and be safe.
Thank you, sir.
As we come to the end of this special coverage, the picture that emerges is one of the region at a critical juncture, where developments on the ground continue to evolve rapidly and where the balance between escalation and de-escalation remains both fragile and uncertain. From the Strait of Hormuz, where tensions surrounding maritime security and global energy flows have raised international concern, to the broader geopolitical landscape involving major global powers, it is clear that the implications of this crisis extend far beyond the immediate region. The interconnected nature of today's world means that security, economic stability and diplomatic engagement are all deeply intertwined, making every development significant on a global scale. We have also seen how international actors from Washington to Beijing are navigating a complex and delicate situation, each seeking to protect their interests while emphasizing the importance of stability and dialogue. At the same time, humanitarian concerns, particularly in areas affected by ongoing hostilities, remain a pressing issue, underscoring the human dimension of this unfolding crisis. The coming days will be decisive, whether through the diplomatic channels and international coordination or renewed efforts toward dialogue. The path forward will require careful navigation and a collective commitment to preventing further escalation. We will, of course, continue to follow all developments closely, bringing you the latest of updates as they unfold. For now, we thank our guests for their valuable insights, and we thank you, our viewers, for staying with us throughout this special coverage. Goodbye.